What's up everybody, it's Pook here, and today I've got a video for you about the game I've been playing most recently, Diablo 3. This is going to be a tutorial on a way to play the Witch Doctor that is, in my opinion, extremely fun, but the best part about it is you can actually get through Inferno with it. It's a problem a lot of people have. They get through the first 3 difficulties the way they like to play. It's really fun, it's really roll-face, and you hit Inferno and you just run into a brick wall, and you have to change your spec, your skills, your gear, your mentality, basically the whole way you played in order to start progressing through Inferno. And more often than not, it's less fun than the way you had already played. So I'm here to offer this spec as a fun way to play early, so that you don't have to change everything for Inferno. You can start this at least in Hell, maybe earlier. I haven't really looked at all the skills. And it can at least get you through Act 2 Inferno. I haven't tried Act 3 Inferno yet. I'm still in Hell gear pretty much. I barely have any gear that's even level 60. But if it can get you through Act 2 in Hell gear, it can probably, more than likely, get you through the entire game with a little bit of Act 1 and 2 gear. So here's my mentality, here's my thought process. I'm leveling up my Witch Doctor, and I didn't want to have the same problem I had on my Barb, where I hit level 60 and I had to completely change everything, and it just wasn't a fun experience. So in late Hell, I decided to go to YouTube and look up some tutorials, see what I was going to have to change for Inferno early, so that it wouldn't be such a disaster. And quite frankly, it was embarrassing. The guides and the tutorials I found on YouTube were pitiful. Like, the people, no offense, but they were more often than not stupid and just plain out wrong about game mechanics, and they were just illogical with some of their choices, and I was just disappointed at not being able to find a really good tutorial on like a solid way to play through Inferno. So I decided, screw it, I'll just play the way I've been playing throughout Hell, and I'll see how far I can get through Inferno, and I'll change stuff later. And it turns out that with just a few tweaks to what I was already doing, you can do Inferno. So I thought I would share this build with you, and hopefully you guys like it. I guess I'll just show you I'll show you my gear later, but I'll show you my skills, and I'll tell you my thought process on why I use each of them, and then at the end I will tell you, I'll show you a clip of how OP this build can be. So here you have it. These are the skills I use, and right away you might be noticing that there's something odd. Where's my, I've only got one main damaging ability, it's Fire Bats, and where's my Poison Darts? I mean, that's pretty much bread and butter with most most Witch Doctor builds. And you're wondering, how do I keep up the mana for it, because they cost a lot of mana. How do I only have a nuke? It's because of this right here. This skill is basically what makes my whole build work. And as long as you have 4 skills on cooldown, you have 4 times the mana regen, which is insane. So I have Fire Bats, and the thing that sets my build apart from some of the other ones I've seen that are kind of similar is most people have Poison Darts, Fire Bats, and then 4 skills. And my main problem with that, I'll tell you right off the bat, is that in order to get benefit from this, you have to have all 4 of your skills that can be on cooldown in order to get them to get your increased mana regen. Which doesn't sound like a problem on paper, but trust me, if being forced to use for example Spirit Walk here, being forced to use it in a situation that you don't need to use it in, can force you into a situation to where you don't have it up when you need it to be. And so I was just like, well, screw that. I'm just gonna have 5 spells that can be on cooldown, and then I'll cycle them, and it will much better allow me to use my skills wisely. But to do that, I had to either give up my nuke, which was Fire Bats, and do less damage, or try and see if I could just use Fire Bats. And it turns out you can. It turns out that you don't need Poison Darts, that you can actually spam Fire Bats with this build. So here, I'll just give a little description of my thought process with each one. Fire Bats, they're long range. If you use Dire Bats, I mean, it's a no-brainer. If you're going to use Fire Bats, you have to use the Rune Dire Bats. and it increases the damage by a lot, increases the range. They pass through all mobs, and it's just insane damage. It really is. This is 90% of your damage right here. So I mean, you could switch this out for what are they, the zombie bears, zombie charger, ruined zombie bears, and these things actually do a little more damage and they cost a little more mana. But I'll tell you why I have a problem with these later. But so yeah, I use fire bats, and for a secondary skill, I use Grasp of the Dead, and I use the 80% slow rune, which in Inferno, you pretty much have to take it. I mean, it's a slow, and it slows them by 80%, and the reason why in Inferno it's such a big deal is things are gonna really fuck you up in Inferno. Things could one-shot you, but more likely you'll get 2 to 3 shot, and keeping them slowed by 80%, I mean, it keeps them off you a lot. I mean, if you look at it, it's got an 8-second cooldown, and it lasts for 8 seconds. So if you're smart with where you place it, you can get use out of this a lot. You can keep them slowed almost all the time. And something that's misleading about the tooltip, I'll point out, is by reading it, I thought it meant it does 20% weapon damage over 8 seconds, and in fact, it does 20% weapon damage per second for 8 seconds. So it actually does 160% weapon damage. So I mean, it's damn good AOE, you know, if you can get a bunch of guys together. But the more important thing is that it's a spell that can be on cooldown, that is a massive slow. So that's why I use it. I think it's a no-brainer. You got to use Grasp of the Dead. But you could switch this out with other stuff. I'm sure it could work. Something that you shouldn't switch out, regardless of what build you use. If you're in Inferno, you pretty much have to use Spirit Walk, and it's a little misleading, the tooltip. Once again, I didn't use this until Hell because I didn't even understand it. But it actually breaks CC. It doesn't say that it breaks CC, and while you are in spirit form, you are immune to CC. Both of those things it doesn't say anything about. It says your movement is unhindered. I mean, you know, I thought that meant you could pass through mobs. Maybe that was supposed to imply the CC thing. I'm not sure. It increases your speed for a few seconds, and most importantly, it's basically, you know, your get out of jail. You know, something gets right on your ass, you spirit walk, and you get the hell out of there. It essentially absorbs half of your life in damage. I've got 34,000 life, and it won't break unless you take half of that. So it essentially is a 17,000 shield for me, and I won't take any damage until it breaks that. Also, I use the rune, gain 15% of your maximum mana per second while you're in there. It lasts 2 seconds, so it's 30% mana. That, combined with a continuous 4 times mana regen from Vision Quest, how do you spam fire bats? That's how. It's the combination of this passive and the rune on this spell. With those two things, you can spam dire bats all day, with only a few exceptions, but I'll get to that later. I mean, this spell is insane. If you take nothing else from this tutorial, hopefully you just take Spirit Walk, because no build should be without this, at least in Inferno. I mean, you have to have it. The most controversial, I'd say, choices I have are Zombie Dogs and Gargantuan, and I'll tell you my reasoning for them a little later. But I use Leeching Beasts, which it's a little bit of healing. It keeps them alive a little bit longer if they don't get one shot, but I mean, whatever if they do. Gargantuan, he doesn't do very much damage. He's a decent tank. He can tank quite a few hits, but none of his runes stuck out as being necessary to me. They all looked about equal. For a while I used Restless Giant, but it just seemed like it was never up when I needed it. It kept proccing when I would get a bunch of enemies all at once, but then it wouldn't be up for a rare pack. So I washed my hands of that, and I've been sticking with Big Stinker ever since. You could use whatever you want, really. It's not a big deal. And my last spell that I use is Soul Harvest, which this is probably another must-have spell. It's so much damage. It gives you 650 int if you can get all 5 enemies with it, and 650 int is 65 magic, not magic resist all, which, I mean, this build doesn't necessarily need you to be defensive, but it never hurts to have 65 resist all. So, I mean, it's just a really good, it's a huge damage increase, and I use the Siphon rune, which just gives you a little bit of healing. I used to use the one that gave you mana back, but with this build you don't need it, honestly. You should never run out of mana. So I switched up for Inferno, and now I'm using the healing one. Every once in a while you need a heal. It's good to use. So those are my abilities, and I'll tell you my reasoning behind why I use the dogs and the gargantuan. But a lot of people, like there will be similar builds to this that use just 4 skills, and you'll have to have them all on cooldown, obviously. Some people use I saw a similar build to mine, and oh, here it was. They used Big Bad Voodoo and Fetish Army in place of the gargantuan and the zombie dogs, which it kind of makes sense. You'd be like, oh well, the zombie dogs and the gargantuan don't really do that much damage. They die right away. You might as well have big cooldowns. Well, my problem with that is something that you would realize too if you actually tried it out, is that in order to benefit from your vision quest, you would have to use them right away. You'd have to use them as soon as you walked into a zone. You know, on the first white pack, I mean the first any mobs you run into, you'll yourself spamming bats if you don't use these cooldowns, and you end up just using like Big Bad Voodoo or Fetish Army on nothing, and then they're not up when you need them, which it's a huge problem. I don't understand this. This is a big problem I saw with a lot of other guides. I don't understand why you would want that. I use the zombie dogs and the gargantuan because while their skills are on cooldown, which is what you want skills to be on cooldown, but while they are, you're still getting use from them. The dogs, they don't do that much damage. Gargantuan doesn't do that much damage, but at least you're still getting something. At least they're useful while they're on cooldown. And also, whether they get one hit or not, you know, your dire bats do so much damage that if a blue pack of mobs take 2 seconds to kill your gargantuan and your zombie dogs, you've probably done a third of their life in fire bats. Like, it just wastes the enemy's time, and between having to kill your zombie dogs, your gargantuan, and having to walk through your grasp of the dead, that's how you avoid damage. That's how you stay alive, and you just nuke them. So that's my reasoning behind using the zombie dogs and the gargantuan. My reason for using fire bats and not where is it? Zombie charger bears. It does do more damage. It costs slightly more mana, which the mana isn't really the problem. But for me, if you use it here, I'll show you. You can see using it that they run in 3 lanes, and it does more damage if you could actually get all of the bears to hit one target, like against a boss, against Butcher for example. You know, he's such a fat ass that you can get each of these bears to hit him, and it'll do a lot more damage than the bats. But you know, if you're trying to just hit single guys that are skinny, you know, it's gonna end up doing less damage than the bats. And also, you've seen it. I mean, look how short the range is. It's half the range, if that, of the bats. So I stick with the bats, and yeah, that's why. I mean, you could switch them out for a boss if you wanted to. Maybe switch out if you're having trouble with the Butcher or something. Switch out the bears. I guarantee they do more damage. But I don't know. Just in general, this is the build I use. Oh, and I guess I'll cover the passives. I use this passive. This one's up for debate. You could probably change this out. This passive increases your maximum mana by 20% and gives you more mana regen. I mean, this helps a little bit. The 1%'s but the real reason why this is good is because Spirit Walk gives you 30% of your maximum mana. So increasing your mana by 20% makes this bonus of 30% even greater. So this just gives you even more mana back. So I mean, before I said that it was there was the rune from Spirit Walk, and this passive. Well, actually, it's both of these passives, and this lets you pretty much endlessly spam your bats for and never need to worry about being out of mana really. And then the last thing I use is something I didn't start using until Inferno, but it's Spirit Vessel, and it's basically a cheat death. Things are gonna, every once in a while, things are gonna teleport to you, and they would have one-shot you. And this move is insane because you cheat death every 90 seconds, and when it procs, you enter the Spirit Realm for 3 seconds, heal 10% of your life, and I'm not sure. I've never actually taken the time to test it. When you're in the Spirit Realm, you might regenerate 45% of your mana. I mean, I could be wrong, but it sounds like the exact same thing as Spirit Walk. But oh no, probably not. But anyway, it's still really good. And the other thing, the main reason why this is really good though, is not just for the cheat death, but when you're playing, I'll show you. You always have your zombie dogs and your gargantuan on cooldown, whether they're alive or dead. You just always keep those on cooldown, and you always keep Grasp of the Dead on cooldown because you just always keep it down. As soon as it's off cooldown, it's over. So you might as well just keep it down. So if you notice what this does is it makes it so that you only have to pay attention to 2 moves. You only have to pay attention to Spirit Walk and Soul Harvest. So this spec allows you to have, since it has 5 spells that can be on cooldown, you can intelligently use these 2 instead of just having to be like, oh well, I need a 4th spell to be on cooldown, so I'll just waste Soul Harvest right here. You can actually think about it. You can be like, I could run in and use Soul Harvest, or I could Spirit Walk away. Like it gives you the freedom to pick which one you want to use. And so basically, what your play style is these 2 moves, Spirit Walk and Soul Harvest. This determines whether you're smart or not, like how you use these 2 moves. And the Spirit Vessel reduces the cooldown of both of these 2 spells by 2 seconds. So your Spirit Walk and your Soul Harvest are your 2 main abilities that you have to think about and be smart with, and now they have 2 seconds less cooldown. So you can heal more often, you can keep these 5 stacks up more often, you can run away more often, you can gain your 30% mana back more often. I mean, it's just insane. The synergy with the spec, like everything is interlocked, and it just works really, really well. So, I mean, like that's basically the play style. That's my philosophy. Is just keep those 3 spells on cooldown regardless, and then just intelligently use your other 2 spells. That's all you got to do, and things will just die. The reason I use the Templar, I mean, mostly it's because I haven't taken the time to actually gear up either the other 2 or try them out. The Enchantress might be better. I know the Enchantress is better on my Barb, but like I said, my philosophy is to let other stuff take the damage and me to nuke it down. So with the Templar, he's going to tank a little bit. He might die in 1 hit also, but with this, I've got 3 dogs, a Templar, and a Gargantuan. By the time they all die, your enemy is pretty much going to be dead. So, yeah. So that's why I use the Templar. You don't necessarily have to, but he's a heal every once in a while, and he's basically just one more thing to tank. Here, I'll show you my gear to prove that I don't really have good gear at all. Let's see, level 45, 59, level 60, 57, 59, 60, 60, 54, 51, 58. So I mean, like, I don't have that. Like, my gear is minimal for what you should have for Inferno, and I can actually get through Act 2. The one thing I would suggest, though, with this build is, and I would suggest this for any character at any level, is keep your weapon up to date. Even if your other gear, like, I generally don't buy gear from the auction house. Like, I just take whatever I find. But keep your weapon updated every 5 levels or so, and it's such a help. I equipped this at the end of Hell, and I don't anticipate losing this anytime soon. And this is really my only piece that I would say, like, warrants me getting through Inferno Act 2. Like, everything else, you'd look at it and you'd say there's no way you could get through Inferno Act 2 with this gear, but trust me, you can. just play around with the spec. Tell me if you like it. This video's turned out to be pretty long, I'm sure, so sorry for the length, but I'll put some footage at the end of this, and you can see how OP it is. And thanks for watching, guys. I'll catch you next time.
Needs more time. Need more time.
Okay, let's put an end to this pathetic hoedown.